The legend of Marathon has grown alongside the success of Bungie. The 3 games of the Marathon trilogy were released between December 21st, 1994 and October 15th, 1996, and aside from Marathon 2 Durandal, were exclusive to the Macintosh. During the first half of the 90s, Apple was falling apart and its meager market share did not cater to video games. Nonetheless, Marathon found enormous success, which is a testament to how brilliant it is. Marathon started life as a sequel to Bungie Software's first commercial success, Pathways into Darkness. Although Marathon was initially very similar to Pathways, Bungie put in a lot of overtime to revamp it into something faster, prettier, and more playable. This new version of Marathon debuted at Boston Macworld Expo in August 1994 and was supposed to ship in 2 weeks. The release date slipped until December 21st, however, because Bungie had spent all their time playtesting the multiplayer component of the game, and it turned out all the single-player levels were garbage. When pre-orders finally did ship, the first run was 4 floppies and a manual shrink-wrapped together, denying gamers, at least initially, of the gorgeous box. I don't have one. I saw one on eBay once going for $400. It's a good thing I can't find it anymore because it would be hard to resist and harder to afford. Somehow, incredibly, I snagged myself a copy of Marathon Infinity. I bought it blind on eBay, no photo and a vague description. Somehow it turned out to be a sealed copy. It's in rough shape, but it's still the centerpiece of my collection and my most prized gaming possession. Aside from my copy of Daikatana, obviously. These triangular boxes are beautiful and unique. I've seen a few games that try something similar, like the trapezoid boxes Eidos used to use, but nothing as striking as the big triangle. It makes it hard to put one of these on a shelf, but if you were a Mac gamer in the 90s, you didn't have many other games to get in the way. If you want the authentic Marathon experience, you'll need some kind of Apple computer. I've got 2. One is a Mac Plus that belonged to my parents when they were first married. The Mac Plus shipped with 1 MB of RAM on the low end, which was frankly excessive. Nobody will ever use 1,000,000 bytes of memory. The other Mac I have is this, a Power Macintosh G3. This G3 has a 233 MHz PowerPC processor, 160 MB of RAM, and an onboard ATI 3D Rage chipset inside a desktop form factor outrigger case. It's running Mac OS 8.6, and I even added a 4 meg SG-RAM SODIMM to expand the video memory to 6 million bytes, though it's not needed for any of the Marathon games. I can't capture video output directly, even with a capture card, because Macs use bizarro non-standard resolutions. This Mac defaults to 640 by 480 at 67 Hz, a refresh rate that I'm sure was selected with a coin flip. Even when set to a PC standard 640 by 480 at 60 Hz, my captured devices will still not pick up the Macintosh video output signal, so parts of this video are going to look like a day one cam rip. This Power Mac is from 1997, so it's more Mac than is needed for Marathon. Even Infinity, released in 1996, was running on the Marathon 2 engine, and compared to Quake and Duke Nukem 3D was pretty dated. Marathon plays like your basic smooth FPS. It's only really impressive when viewed in context of the time it was created. Even Quake, the first game in the 3D revolution in 1996, still didn't have much support for mouse control and strafing. Marathon is designed to let you strafe and use mouse look, which means you can play it today with very little mental adjustment. You cannot, however, invert mouse look. This bothers me because not only do I use inverted mouse, I can conclusively prove that it makes more sense than the laughably named standard mouse look. More on that another time, perhaps. The PC version of Marathon 2 does allow inverted vertical and horizontal mouse controls. Having easy access to mouse look also meant the levels tended more towards verticality than Doom. Unlike in Doom, where your shots auto-aim to various Z levels, you have to aim manually. The game plays great with a 2-button mouse, which is unfortunate because it's on a Mac. And in those days, Macs used a proprietary peripheral connector called the Apple Desktop Bus. It's not totally proprietary because it's the same connector as S-Video, but 2-button Apple mice have never been easy to find. Marathon also has weapons with alternate fire modes. For the basic handgun, that includes a dual wielding system with the offhand gun bound to the secondary fire key. Aside from just being incredibly cool, this is also a great gameplay feature. Early on in the game, it adds a level of weapons progression without giving access to a new weapon, and it keeps the handgun competitive until the end of the game. Bungie has always had a multiplayer focus. Hell, their first commercial game, Minotaur, was multiplayer only in the days when multiplayer was a rare and fantastical creature. That emphasis on multiplayer also means Bungie games feature well-balanced weapons, and it keeps you switching between them throughout the game. The assault rifle has an underbarrel grenade launcher as the alternate fire, which seems oddly prescient in the era of modern shooters. The weapons also do different types of damage, so ballistic weapons are better against soft targets, and energy weapons like the fusion pistol can cause mechanical enemies to go super critical. The aliens you fight all fit in a theme, and the weapons all feel grounded in some kind of sci-fi reality. Compared to Doom, where the monsters and weapons all seem individual and random, Marathon can be a bit less fantastic. It really is a sci-fi interpretation of Doom. I don't think either is better. One may appeal to you more than the other, but I like to imagine we live in a world where both exist comfortably side by side. The levels in Marathon 1 are pretty good. They were improved in Marathon 2 and were incredibly detailed in Marathon Infinity. The game engine, like Doom's, can't do true 3D rendering, so a lot of tricks are used to make levels with interesting vertical layouts. In Marathon 1, the level design is dark and feels very gritty. It seems to depend on who designed the levels. Some make you feel like you're exploring the bowels of a huge ship converted from an asteroid, and some just feel like arbitrary FPS mazes. You have a map to help you navigate, and you even have a motion tracker to help you locate enemies. Marathon also has level attributes that mix up the standard shooting. Vacuum levels are perhaps the most interesting and notorious. Certain weapons and enemy types are not vacuum enabled, so the levels have a different flavor without them. You have to make it to oxygen refill stations periodically to keep from taking vacuum damage. It's a great idea that brings authenticity to the space setting. It's a pain in the ass, but still cool. Instead of finding health pickups, you recharge your health and up to 2 layers of shields at recharge stations. Marathon 2 introduced shield recharge canisters, which work a little better for game balance. You don't save between levels, but instead save at computer terminals scattered around the levels. This makes some stages extremely difficult if they don't have a save point or only have one at the end. The game is very difficult because of ammo restrictions and distance between health recharges and save points. The story is almost optional. Story information and objectives are sprinkled around on terminals, but you don't have to read them, and you only even have to activate the ones that take you to the next level. It's absolutely worth it to read every single screen of every terminal you come across, though. I won't go into the whole story here because it would take too much time, and the real pleasure in playing the games is slowly gathering the bits of story at your own pace from the terminals, all of which are very well written by Greg Kirkpatrick. I'll talk about some of the principal themes, though. The bad guys are the Four, a race of alien slavers who attack the Marathon and the colony of Tau Ceti. They have faster-than-light travel capability, but seem to owe their technological superiority to a long-since-deceased alien race. Sound familiar? Their lower ranks are filled by subjugated alien races that give their army some much-needed diversity, both in story and gameplay terms. AI constructs are a Bungie mainstay. The Marathon is jointly managed by 3 AIs. Leela is the tutorial AI, to put it simply, but it's not so clear-cut as that. You don't so much outgrow her as you lose her backup, and when she is reintroduced at the end of the game, she is still more powerful and important than you are, and is able to wrap things up pretty well. Durandal is an AI in charge of doors and the Marathon's subsystems who has become rampant inside the Marathon's large network. Durandal sees the closing of the universe as his own inevitable death, and he hijacks the player to help him steal a Four ship and gain their faster-than-light technology. Initially, he is an unstable ally at best and an antagonist at worst, but he grows and matures into a real ally, albeit a sarcastic one. This contrasts with the science AI Tycho, who is put in a state of artificial rampancy by the Four and just goes mad with power as a result. The player is a security officer on the Tau Ceti colony who goes to investigate the Marathon at the outset of the game. He seems awfully powerful for a human, something which can't be fully explained by his Mjolnir power armor. It is heavily implied that he is a reactivated Battleroid, a combat cyborg basically, with salvaged alien neural implants. Marathon 2 abandoned the Marathon and actually took place mostly on Lahuan, an alien planet, and some alien ships. Thanks to nice skyboxes and good level design, the supposedly outdoor levels on the planet's surface look and feel pretty good. The alien ship levels, on the other hand, suck. In Marathon 1, they had a noticeable style and a creepy color scheme. In Marathon 2, they become a lot blockier, and the textures are so colorful it's silly and distracting. Infinity makes the alien ships a bit better with darker, more realistic textures and overall better level design, but Marathon 1 was the only one in the trilogy to really make them feel special. Marathon 2 also dropped the background music and replaced it with atmospheric level sounds. It was a pretty good idea that made the alien planet levels feel much more immersive and atmospheric. I wouldn't have minded atmospheric noise and music, though. The music in Marathon 1 was composed by Alex Seropian and is simple, but still has some wonderful tracks sprinkled in. After Marathon 2, Greg Kirkpatrick left Bungie and formed his own studio named Double Aught. Double Aught made the lion's share of the actual content of Marathon Infinity using a largely unmodified Marathon 2 engine. The rest of Bungie was moving on to Myth, a fantasy real-time strategy game. Marathon Infinity plays fast and loose with the continuity set up by the previous game. Mostly that was because Marathon 2 ended without a sequel hook, as the third game wasn't originally planned. Bungie would not make this mistake again. The story in Infinity is brilliant, but extremely confusing. The game starts by rewriting the end of Marathon 2, and from there you travel between multiple timelines, replaying strange and corrupted versions of the events of the previous game. It's unbelievably confusing, but so much fun to try to parse out the different plot threads. I'm sure everybody has their own headcanon for Infinity, but mine is the best. No matter how much time you spend poring over the terminal text in Infinity and charting out the timelines and comparing phrasing of terminals and all that insanely in-depth stuff, you can always get more out of it. Every once in a while I get obsessed with Marathon again, once a year reliably, and have to play it and bend my mind around the story arc one more time. And I always have aha moments as I discover new stuff. There has never, and I mean that, never, okay? There have been many stories told in the context of gaming. None have ever been so complicated or so well wrought. None have had so much subtext, or even so much text. After Marathon Infinity, Greg Kirkpatrick's Double Aught began work on a very ambitious project called Duality. I'm sad to say it failed, as did the company, and not much information about it survives. Despite being clearly a great writer, Greg Kirkpatrick kind of disappeared after that. It's a shame. His work on Marathon made it my favorite story, not just in a game, but ever. Clearly, you need to play it. Right before Bungie was purchased by Microsoft in 2000, they released the source code to the Marathon 2 engine, which was eventually developed into the open-source AlephOne engine. In 2005, Bungie made the games freely available for download. AlephOne is the easy way to play Marathon, but that's not a bad thing. All 3 games can be downloaded and played for free on Mac, Windows, or Linux on a wide range of hardware. The AlephOne engine is extremely scalable, and updates have added interesting modern graphics options like texture filtering and bloom lighting. Some user-made scenarios look super cool with bloom lighting, and yes, you can now invert mouse look. I will point out a few things. First of all, the game is nauseating if you play it in widescreen, just like most old 2.5D shooters. Second, the engine used for all 3 games is the Marathon 2 engine, which means Marathon 1 doesn't look or play quite like it originally did. There are plugins to add back the old-school square HUD, and you don't have to use any high-res third-party texture packs, but the mechanics of the game are ever so slightly different. Marathon 2 and Infinity play perfectly, as far as I can tell. If you have an old-school Mac or PC, you can also download the original versions for free, although Marathon 2 was the only one originally released for Windows. The PC version of Marathon 2 was released only a few weeks before the sequel came out for Mac. Bungie received a huge amount of hate mail from Mac-loyal fans who felt betrayed. The PC equivalent of console wars is Mac versus Windows, and fans even then were adamant their beloved games stay exclusive to their beloved platforms. But here's the deal. In 1996, when Bungie shuffled Infinity off to Double Aught and was working on Myth, which was released for Mac and Windows, Apple was in trouble and had been for some time. Apple even tried unsuccessfully to sell themselves to IBM, and it wasn't until 1998 when they started to make their comeback. After Steve Jobs returned to the company, they partnered with Microsoft to release Office for iMac and release their first successful machine in a very long time, the iMac. The point is, fandom outrage notwithstanding, releasing Marathon 2 on PC was the right move. Releasing Myth on PC was the right move, and getting purchased by Microsoft was absolutely the right move. But if you want a solid copy of the Mac versions, it might be cheaper to invest in time travel technology than to buy one in box. Copies of Marathon 2 are the easiest to find, though I haven't seen in the original Mac Triangle box. You can find the PC version in box, which is a standard box shape but still gorgeous. Probably the most coveted is the Marathon Trilogy Box Set. It includes 2 discs, the original 3 games on 1 disc with some bonus content, including old promotional material and 30 minutes of home video footage of Bungie during development, as well as a copy of Pathways into Darkness and a bonus disc containing a collection of net maps. Best of all, it includes the Marathon Scrapbook, with history and factoids about Bungie's formation and the development of Marathon. Is it worth it? Not for the asking price, no. If you come across one in the wild for a good price, snag it. But we both know that's not happening. The thing is, the game is available for free. You can download a super high quality scan of the Scrapbook for free, and you can watch the home videos on YouTube for free. So I really can't recommend spending a lot of money tracking the game down. The best part about Marathon is the game anyway, and what use do you have for a game that won't run on modern Mac OS, or any Windows OS? That being said, here comes the hypocritical part of the video. I have all 3 games for Mac in their original CD sleeves, no manuals or boxes, but it's still cool to have and I found it for cheap on eBay. I also have the cardboard CD sleeve part of the Trilogy Box Set. It's only in respectable shape, but it includes the stickers and wasn't very expensive either. The PC version is easy and inexpensive to find in box, so it's no surprise I have that one. It was sealed when I bought it, but I defaced it out of curiosity and to have more feelies to show up for the video. Of course, the crown jewel of my Marathon loot and my entire game collection as a whole is Marathon Infinity, sealed in box. As I mentioned at the beginning, I got this for a great deal because I bought it blind. Overall, I spent very little money on Marathon-related gear, a little more if you include the PowerMac G3 and ADB peripherals I bought mainly to play Marathon on. Mostly what I spent is time. These things don't come up very often, so just keep an eye open. The real secret of Marathon collecting is the Mac Action Sack, a budget bundle of Mac software that includes Pathways into Darkness, which is impossible to find on its own, the Marathon Trilogy, Abuse, a Bungie-published side-scrolling shooter, and even Bungie's first game, Minotaur Labyrinths of Crete, all on one disc and teamed with a fetching sack. This is the version you should buy. Last time I checked, these were everywhere, almost all still sealed and stupid cheap. And the price includes the sack. Marathon is 20 years old this month and still loved and respected by a rabid fan base. So get to it. As Bungie says, never stop running, never stop firing. And I say, never stop playing Marathon. And released their first successful machine in a very long time, the iMac. Fun fact, Steve Jobs wanted to call it Mac-Man, which would not only have been retarded, but it would have gotten them sued by Namco. As usual, one of his more level-headed co-workers rescued his shitty idea from the trash heap, suggesting iMac. The I stands for Internet.